Hello, my name is Matt Bird, and welcome to the PublishU podcast, where we explore the real life stories of authors from around the world. Today, I'm joined by Christian Cox from Ascot in England, who has written a book called Agency. Christian, welcome.
Good morning, Matt. How are you today?
Very well, all the better for seeing you. So, you're always a very happy chappy. It's one of the things I love about you. Full of energy. You've already been to the gym, taken the dog for a walk, and all of that, and about to start your day. So, tell us about your day. What does the world of Christian Cox look like beyond walking the dog and going to the gym? What is it you do?
Okay, well, my start point, and I'm a stickler for sort of rules. And one of my life rules is either do something properly, or don't do it at all. So my day starts 6:30. I make five different hot drinks: English breakfast, Earl Grey for my wife, Red Bush for my daughter, hot chocolate for my oldest child with a scoop of protein powder, and milk for my smallest.
Gosh,
Walk the dog. Yeah, busy. Walk the
you
dog.
could be in the military, couldn't you?
How do you know I'm not from the military?
Oh.
And I'm having this chat with you in my office, which most people finds disturbing, for two reasons. One, I'm actually not allowed in here if there's anyone else because I'm too loud, too positive, and get a bit excited. And then the second thing, I think probably here, I don't know. I'll just swivel it
Yeah, I
around.
can see it. Yeah, yeah.
People, it's a bit sort of like Rain Man-esque, but I believe in life. If you want to do something, you write it down, you make a list.
Yeah.
And my core business is I develop properties in central London, and that's got to be visual. So every project I'm working on for the last 3 months, because I like to look at a little bit of success. So anything in red is like, woohoo, it's sold. And then green and black is what's in the pipeline. And
Yeah.
that's what I do, buy and sell property, and build them.
Amazing. What fun. And have you been doing this for very long? Have you been in the property market industry for sector for how long have you been working in it?
So if you were to chop me in half, my DNA is probably more estate agent than developer.
Hmm.
And I put that and a few other quirks down to being relatively successful, i.e., rules, order, process. But in 1999, 2000, I set off to London a little bit like Dick Whittington. I had I genuinely had enough money for my first month's rent.
Yeah.
I hadn't realised that they'll want a month's.
Deposit.
I sort of managed to fluff the landlord for the first 4 weeks, and in the end, he just said, "I think you're a good guy. Don't worry about it." Um, and it was 400 quid a month to have this.
Wow.
Let's swear, a terribly small room in a flat in Battersea that backed onto a railway line, which meant I never needed an alarm clock. Is probably why I wake up at 6:30 every day because that was the first train out of Victoria as it trundled past. And then I started a decade, 11-year long career, climbing the ladder of one of the most aggressive estate agencies of the day.
Interesting. We're going to come back to that. So when
And
did you
then,
go on?
sorry,
Go on.
and then after, I did 11 years of that, and then I sort of, a little bit like sort of Luke Skywalker and Darth Vader, I then stepped over to the dark side. I took a year out, and then I developed, and I would say the DNA of understanding the mechanics down to absolute nuts and bolts of agency allowed me to have an edge and still does allow me to have an edge on my competitors because I view stock in what comes to the market on a very different level. But really, so that was 2000. We're now 2025. So for the next 15 years, I've developed apartments mainly in RBKC, mainly Notting Hill, Kensington, Chelsea, tiny bit of Bayswater. We've done 178 contracts, but we physically built about 130 apartments over that period. And that's my core business. I've invested, owned, and sold out of two further estate agencies, and I love turtles. So we sponsor the Balearic Turtle Sanctuary. We've created a children's shoe business. My turtle clips. There's my post pitch. But I just love being busy, Matt. You know,
Yeah.
I love life, and the reason why I'm probably energetic and positive, and that's why I liked you immediately, is, you know, someone who's an oxygen thief, miserable, always has a problem in their life. It might come from them. It hasn't been medically proven, but it might be catching.
So you steer clear. Me too.
I just, those people, anyone that remotely brings you down, cut them out. We're not hit, you know, you help your family, you help people as much as you can, but we're not each other's carers. And positivity, how you set your day with your intention without getting too spiritual, I really believe in that. You know, you want something to happen, you put in the effort with positive energy. More often than not, it does. And I'm happy with a 50, 60% success
That's
rate.
right. Absolutely. Bring it on. So, Christian, you've achieved many things. When did you first think, oh, I might want to write a book?
The I'm living proof that this overquoted phrase is truth, that there is a book in everybody, because my English and grip of the language is not 100%. I was not a big book reader. I am now, but I really only began to read properly, I would say, in my mid 20s.
Mm.
And until then, I've read some texts because I had to at school, but I have zero interest in it. Um, I would say the book has been in me for sort of 5 or 6 years because so many people over the years have said, estate agency, the period, the drama, the stories, someone needs to write a book about the noughties, that decade when it was halcyon days where people were, you know, they were caricatures of the business. You know, my colleagues, myself, we were driving, you know, Porsches, Ferraris, BMWs. We looked sort of wretched, and at times we were, I think, because to get to the top, you had to be pretty vicious to your colleagues. But what you didn't see was the absolute hard work, the grit, the determination, the tears, the sweat, and all of the stories. And you know, the book is, it is fiction, but it is the contribution of many, many people with many, many stories, of which some may have happened, some may not have happened, because it is fiction. But it was a truly golden age of estate agency when we
Yeah.
went from being ultra sleepy, to the market changing. And, you know, now we would call it, we know the definition, we would call a disruptor. And that's what the business in my mind, the one I'm inspired from, it did. It disrupted the market in a beautiful way.
Yeah. So this is your book. So, 5 or 6 years you've been thinking, I need to write this book, or people are telling you you need to write this book. So tell us about the book. You've called it Agency.
So the title is twofold. It's about agency, and there is a main character who is called Agent C, and it's his journey through, you know, an interesting time as we all go through when we're younger. Not everyone does this, but most people at some point move to the big city, and whether you're, you know, outside of New York and you move to Manhattan. In my case, it was sleepy West Country, where I can remember my pocket money from my Danish granny, was a section of what came from the farm. So it would be pigskin. Now we'd call it pork scratchings, and it would be about half a meter by half a meter. And I would go off to the local sweet shop with that, and I would barter to get sweets, and I'd come back with bonbons, cola bottles. I was quite a hard negotiator. I would snap the pork scratchings and say, I'm going to keep half of that. So when the journey of people to London, I think is just a fascinating, wonderful start point. And, you know, I lived in a really crappy flat and I had to learn the geography of London, the culture of London. And I was hooked day one. I love the anonymity of the big city, that you can have steak and chips for breakfast, dim sum. You can eat any time of the day from any culture. To me, it's electricity. Talking about it is actually giving me goose pimples, not
Yes.
about the book, but that's probably more anxiety and worry, um, but about the city. And it's the journey of, like, so many people going to the big city with really very little, and becoming relatively successful, and, you know, buying your first property, and, you know, probably a journey. I would bet my house you did something similar, Matt. You
Yeah.
know, talented guy.
Amazing. The Whittington story.
Yeah, yeah, and actually that was one of my nicknames for a bit because when I started in property, there was a certain type of which everyone was the same, a lot of twin-barreled yellow socks,
Yeah.
braces. And I turned up in a three-piece grey suit that actually, all my suits are now midnight blue or black. I will never wear an item of grey clothing because of it, because I was teased so relentlessly for having a three-piece suit from Marks and Spencer's. And you had to learn the rules of the road really quickly.
Yes.
And I was not of the mold of what an estate agent looked or behaved like,
Yeah.
which
Your
meant
advantage. To your
it was my
advantage.
advantage, I think, because people got me rather than
Mm.
the biggest error people make, I think, in any business is trying to be someone they're not.
Yeah.
And with a property, it is the biggest transaction that a man woman couple will ever make. And you buy the individual first, and you buy them because you find someone you trust,
Yeah.
and then you find the property.
Mm.
And it happens in that order.
Yeah.
I think people quite enjoyed that. Where are you from? The West Country. What are you doing here? I'm not really
I'm
sure.
not sure. I don't know.
I'm going to work that bit out.
So your book is a fiction, but also in it there are some truths that people perhaps beginning in this property sector might be able to draw from. Is that part of your hope in writing the book?
So the book was it was always going to be fiction, but I'm not even sure whether there's a genre for this, but there's a lot of lessons in there as to a sales process. And again, I started this chat about order and process, which I guess gives away how I'm wired. But within a few months of being at this imaginary company, I got noticed for having order and process. By the way, I was terrible for the first few months. I really didn't have a clue. And I met some incredibly inspiring and talented people. And I learned two things. One, if you see someone doing something better than you, copy it, learn it, emulate it, make it your own version of that. But two, have the order. So I actually list in one chapter, I'm not sure which one it is, I think it's called The Rising. All my chapters have a terrible soundtrack. So if you don't like 80s, 90s, and early 2000s soft rock, don't buy this book, okay? It's not going to be your thing. But I go through a whole sales process that's applicable, not for property, not for boats or cars. It's for everything in a sales environment. So the individual can learn from that, but also as a consumer, you can begin to recognize, as a few trusted people have that I've sent the book to. I get a message saying, you won't believe it, but I'm actually at level 6 of the sales process with the guy at the car garage, and I now know how to deal with him.
Very good. And I can see you doing quite a lot on this sales process, Christian, now the book is out, I mean, how does it make you feel now, we'll come back to the course in a moment, but, you put the hours in, you put the days in, 100 days, you wrote your book, you got some feedback, you polished it off, we've published it for you. How does it feel having achieved this? Your book is now can be bought by anybody anywhere in the world. I mean, whoa, what's happening in Christian's head at this moment?
Um, so, in reverse order, the profits from the book are going to two charities. MND, my name is Dodie, charity, and Click Sergeant, the profits. So I was inspired by a good place because I lost a very important friend to me, and he said, what are you going to do? And I said, this isn't about me, it's about you. And he said, no, it's all about you because I know my journey. Whereas, what are you going to change? So I work less. I agreed I'd learn a language, and we were joking. He said, you're going to write a book about what we all did. So from that side, it's a huge amount of pride, a little bit emotional, but it is an amazing achievement. And I come down pretty hard on someone who would just in passing would say, oh yeah, I'm thinking about writing a book. I literally corner them and say, you can do it. I did it. My wife laughs at the fact that every day she's like, I still can't believe you've written a book and people are buying it. It makes no sense. So it's a huge amount of pride and satisfaction. Um, and the course, you've asked me about, is there any way to improve it? The structure in how you coach me is actually incredible, and I'm actually not going to give away anything about it because I think it's alchemy. That's your gift that you have to help extract a book from someone, which is a really impressive thing. But yeah, just hugely satisfying, and I think it's really good for an individual to do it. The worst thing is that your children's children will have a reference point to look back and hopefully not cringe too much and go, bloody hell. That's what my dad or granddad or great granddad, a few people wanted me to publish it when I was a great, 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 great granddad. What I achieved.
Yeah, remarkable, remarkable. And so your highest hope for your book, Christian, obviously it raises money for your two charities that you feel passionate about. Putting that aside for a moment, what do you hope is the impact of your book?
I hope the impact is threefold. One, people enjoy it and
Mm.
see behind sort of the outer casing. Bankers, estate agents, and traffic wardens are quite easy to sort of chastise and go, wow, what despicable people. But see behind the scenes the sweat, the blood, the love, the passion, the caring, the camaraderie, the gang. Um, Two, laugh. Again, the people that I know have read it, I've had some lovely messages like, oh my God, goodness, did that really happen? Of course, it's fiction. So you have to make the judge of that. Um, yeah, and it's just a really lovely time. And I also feel quite lucky to have worked in that period. The people that are still in property, and I won't mention any brands, but the top people of the top five brands all came through one company, and that's an exceptional statistic, and it's because the training and everything we did there was really so good.
You were a true market disruptor.
We were good at it.
Amazing. Well, on that note, thank you, Christian. And thank you all for listening to the PublishU podcast featuring the real life stories of authors from around the world. If you are interested in becoming an author like Christian, please do visit our website, www.publish, the letter U, publishu.com. And if you enjoyed this broadcast, make sure you subscribe for more. Thank you all for joining us, and goodbye for now.